when the dream dies, just the realization, right? Because when I started to write this, I spoke about when the dream dies. And as I wrote it and as I read and as I did research, I realized the dream has died already. But the first words that I wrote, when the dream dies, we wake up. It's time to start talking about the quiet part out loud. The thing that no one wants to say, the thing that some people won't admit probably ever, is that we have permanently, irreversibly lost a portion of this country. They are not going to recover. They are not going to wake up ever. And it's not because the truth isn't available to them. It's not because history hasn't already spoken and taught these same lessons. It's more because actual reality, actual data, actual facts, actual history threatens the fantasy they've wrapped themselves in. This fantasy where America is the moral North Star of the rest of the world. America, the pure. This fantasy of another time, when justice was optional, where power required no accountability, and where dignity only belonged to a select few. They don't want to go back to the past. They want to go back to a hierarchy. And they will cling to the fantasy until their last breath, even if that means destroying the very country they claim to love. Ramses often talks to me about what we need to make change. And in my mind, I'm always thinking, man, this revolution that we need is not possible in this country, not anymore. But there's a truth that Ramses planted a seed of. And thank God that it's grown a little bit. And it's that we don't need everyone to wake up. We just need enough of us who haven't fallen asleep yet to stay woke.
I like that.
Their nostalgia does not come from an innocent place. And it's interesting because every time I see that red hat, I have a almost chemical and emotional response to it. I can't believe it when I'm seeing it in person, that I'm seeing a real person in real life, not at one of those rallies, that's willing to walk outside and identify themselves. Hey, everyone, look at me. I'm a part of the most vile group in a lifetime. Because when they say make America great again, they're not calling back to unions and pensions and factory wages and middle class dreams. Ramses talks about a time where capitalism and the American dream was real. The middle class was a real thing. There was a period in our history where people went from poverty to the real meaning of middle class, where they were able to buy homes and cars and take a vacation. And we worked to that dream. That's not what they're calling back to. They're talking about a time where racism did not require code words or whispers, where people wouldn't have even dreamed of challenging sexism. You know, when women couldn't vote or have bodily autonomy or make any decisions without their husbands. Back when diversity wasn't, or I'm sorry, was considered dangerous. When whiteness meant unquestioned authority. When those who were supposed to speak truth to power, like the press, bent the knee to those who had power already. Dissenters knew their place, and power could harm without consequence. So it's not nostalgia for this great period in American history. No. Nostalgia for cruelness, indecency, and impunity. They don't miss the country being great. They miss unchallenged supremacy on their terms. Supremacy that was never willing to step down willingly. Supremacy that will only collapse when the future outgrows it. You may ask, we must be living in different realities. How do they not see what's happening and wake up? For them to change would require confession. I was manipulated. I was fooled. I was tricked. I was played. I confused hate for patriotism. I voted against myself, against my family, against my children, against my parents. I voluntarily stood on the wrong side of history. The people who I othered and demonized and made my enemy were fighting for freedom, not for attention. I was not defending my country. I was not defending America. I was defending the hierarchy. It was never about politics. MAGA is not a political party. It's ego and fear wrapped in identity. They're not rejecting the truth because it's false. They're rejecting the truth because it threatens who they think they are. You cannot wake someone who needs that dream to be real just to simply feel alive. Our country is going through an identity crisis. Dave Chappelle once said, everyone in China is Chinese. Ramses and I felt that without context, without nuance, without explanation. We understood it immediately. That phrase is the entire American story. America does not have and intentionally never built or created a shared identity of what it means to be American. We were taught the myth of unity while living the reality of the caste system. Whiteness is the baseline for American citizenship. That's why you don't see white immigrants being torn away from their families or crashed into in traffic or dragged out of their homes in the middle of the night and zip tied in the street. Wealth is a proof of worth. Religion used to gatekeep. An American, a filtered word. We don't share a national identity. We share a national argument about who's allowed to matter.
Mm.
It is impossible to build unity on a foundation of denial. I ask every day as I watch horrific, awful things happen to people. Will there ever be any accountability? I think that's a question that haunts all of us. Will the people who push this country toward chaos ever be held accountable? The sad truth is that history says no. Power in America rarely fails. Not completely. It reshapes, rebrands, and resurfaces. Our original sin, slavery. Well, those who were once slaveholders were paid reparations for having lost their property. And then they became lawmakers, senators, governors, congressmen. Confederates became patriots in textbooks. Architects of war became statesmen. White supremacists got TV shows. Today's white supremacists have very popular podcasts. But they got TV shows, contracts on news networks. They didn't go to prison. They've labeled Antifa a terrorist organization, but not the Ku Klux Klan. Mm-hmm. America doesn't punish the powerful. America promotes them. Accountability, however, doesn't always happen in a courtroom. Sometimes accountability is being simply remembered correctly. Sometimes it's being left behind by the future you tried to prevent. Sometimes justice does not involve handcuffs. Sometimes it's humiliation, irrelevance, and an honest account in the history books. We like to imagine revolution as fire in the streets. Trust me, that's how my brother likes to see it.
I like that.
Patriots and dramatic cinematic moments. The startling truth is that our country was engineered intentionally to prevent that from ever happening. We're so aggressively fragmented that we'll never have the solidarity required for the type of revolution that you dream of. Distraction over mobilization. Crippling debt over meaningful dissent. Surveillance, if you pay attention, they're starting an uptick on that, over uprising. Individualism over community. A real revolution here will not resemble 1776. It'll look more like refusal, erosion, and if there's a such thing as answered prayers, replacement. People will quietly start to withdraw from systems that don't serve them. Communities will build alternatives. Coalitions will replace institutions. Prayerfully, the youth will reject these narratives of decline, and a new identity will emerge simply out of exhaustion for the old one. Revolution might not be declared. It might, however, become inevitable. My brother does a lot to help me hold on to some semblance of hope. But I don't like hope for hope's sake. So here's something tangible. We don't have to wake them up. We just have to outgrow them, out organize them, and participate with each other. Demographics are shifting. I hope that coalitions are forming. We see a lot of youth on their side parroting the ideals of their parents. But I see young people rejecting authoritarianism. Truth keeps resurfacing no matter how many times they try to bury it. And every crisis exposes their lies more clearly. Regression is loudest when progress becomes unstoppable. They aren't roaring because they're winning. They're roaring because they're losing control. They realize the future isn't theirs to claim. It is ours to invent. So I will leave you with what I feel like is our truth. Some people are not asleep at all. They're intentionally hiding in a dream where they mattered more. What I've decided to do is stop engaging them altogether. Let them sleep. We're building our morning. The future won't be decided by those who cling to this semblance of dominance, but by those who choose dignity for everyone. We do not need all of them to change. But like I say to my brother, and like he scribed on a very special gift that he gave me, we just need enough of us to keep going. History has never been moved by the stubborn, only by the determined. They might not ever wake up, but over here, we're wide awake and we have no intention on going back to sleep.